But if you will, turn in your Bibles, 1 Samuel chapter 17. 1 Samuel chapter 17, beginning with verse 22. You'll notice here the word of the Lord for today. And David left his supplies in the hand of the supply keeper and ran to the army and came and greeted his brothers. And then as he talked with them, there was the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, coming up from the armies of the Philistines, and he spoke according to the same words. And so David heard them. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him and were dreadfully afraid. So the men of Israel said, "Have you seen this man who has come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel. And it shall be that the man who kills him, the king will enrich with great riches, will give him his daughter, and give his father's house exemption from taxes in Israel." And then David spoke to the men who stood by him, saying, "What shall be done for the man who kills his Philistines and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God?" I mean, I think if they were going to cancel all of my taxes, I would have fought him myself. Verse 27, "And the people answered him in this manner, saying, So shall it be done for the man who kills him. Now Eliab, his oldest brother, heard when he spoke to the men, and Eliab's anger was aroused against David, and he said, Why did you come down here? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your pride and the insolence of your heart, for you've come down to see the battle. And David said, What have I done now? Is there not a cause? And then he turned from him toward another and said the same thing. And these men answered him as the first ones did. And now when the words which David spoke were heard, they reported them to Saul, and he sent for him. And then David said to Saul, Let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And I want to talk today from the subject of defining moments. Defining moments. Sometimes the greatest battle of your life is the thing that will really define you. It is the thing that will make you. It is the thing that will bring you into national prominence. And it may not be national or global prominence, but it's the thing that might make you known in your school and in your club. It might be the thing that makes you known in your neighborhood, in your neck of the woods, in your sphere of influence. It's the thing that will make you. There oftentimes is something with which you battle or wrestle that actually defines you. The defining moment is generally something that could either make you or break you. And so it is the thing based on how you respond to it. It becomes a defining moment. You know, success is oftentimes just the result of how you respond to failure. It's how you respond to failure. Because every successful person that I know has failed. So real success is based on a proper response to failure. Instead of letting your failures define you, you actually, define you in a negative way, you actually let it make you and define you for the thing that you will ultimately become known for. So the decision that David made as a teenager to fight somebody older, somebody bigger, and somebody more experienced, this was a game changer for David. It was a defining moment. Was it intimidating? Absolutely. And your defining moment will be intimidating as well. Do you have a guarantee with a defining moment? Absolutely not. It could go this way or this way, and you just really don't know. But when you have a defining moment, you're going to go for broke. And this is exactly what David did. But make sure that whatever you allow to define you has sufficient rewards. Now this one had some pretty good rewards, and David, he was excited about the fact that he was going to get special, attention from the king, not only the king's the king's daughter's hand in marriage, but his whole father's household was going to be tax exempt. Now, if you count that up over the years, that's better than winning the lottery. I mean, that is a real blessing. I mean, whatever you make, you get to take home your gross pay forever. You and your daddy's house. Oh, forget that. You can keep your daughter, just the tax exempt thing. But let me just say this, that they are the hard choices that get you where you need to be. They are the hard choices that get you where you need to be. Life is filled with some very difficult challenges, difficult choices. The greatest power that we have as human beings is the power of choice. Don't ever take it for granted. It is the power of choice. And they are the hard choices that get you where you need to be. It is never an easy choice. It's the hard choice. Who should I marry? Where should we live? Where should we work? Should I leave or should I stay? They are the hard choices that actually get you where you need to be. And sometimes your problem is not what you are lacking, but who you fail to let go of that is hindering you. Let me just say that again. Sometimes your problem is not what you are lacking, it is who you fail to let go of that is hindering you. I mean, aren't there some people that are in your life and in your world that if you had to do all over again, that you wouldn't take with you the next time? You just wouldn't take them. If you had to do all over again, there are some people, somebody has popped in some of your minds right now. You know that there are some people that you wish you had never, ever met. There's somebody that pops in your mind. And so it's always a who that hinders us. It's a who that hinders us. So there are different things that have the effect of being a defining moment, The very word define itself, the word define, this is really interesting that you're seeing it in operation. To define, this is what it means. To state the precise meaning of. To state the precise meaning of. The second definition is to describe the nature or basic qualities of. Here's another definition for define. To give form or meaning to. When you define something, you give form to it. You give it its meaning. So whatever gives you meaning, you have to be very critical about who you give the power or the authority to make definitions in your life. The word, can I give you just a little bit of etymology? The word define comes from a Latin word, definere, and it actually means, get this, to limit or to determine. Because when you define something, you said you are in this area and you are in this lane, and that is a limiting thing, but it is necessary. I mean, can you imagine if you went out into the streets on the highway and there were no lanes? And somebody's just coming over into your area and you just have collisions happening all of the time because they're not lane. You need to define what are my responsibilities in this relationship and what your responsibilities are so that we can manage the agreement. You don't manage relationships, you manage agreements. Are you listening? You don't manage relationships, you manage agreements. In relationships that are going to be maintained peacefully, you learn to manage agreements. So if there's going to be an agreement that, okay, that I'm going to do the dishes and take out the trash, and you're going to mow the lawn and do the hedges and clean the bathrooms and you have an understanding, you define, you limit the responsibilities that this is your lane, this is my lane. We have a meeting of the minds, we understand that, and that allows us to be able to communicate. If you don't have a common understanding of the terms that you're using, then definitions can confuse people. If one thing means something to you and it means something totally different to me, we lose the power to actually communicate. So defining is a good thing, but you must be able to trust the one who does the defining. And I want you to realize this, that God made everything and everyone different. God made us different for a purpose. He gave a delineation to particular things based on how he made us. He made our differences to be a mark of distinction that help to define who we are. And whenever you start erasing the things that define us, roles get confused. And then you cross over into each other's territory and begin to offend. Because if somebody comes in my lane while I'm in my lane and they're trying to come in at the same point, we're going to have an offense. See, there's going to be a problem because the territory was not defined and it was crossed. So definitions help us to be able to communicate it. It helps to put us on the same page. I'm just amazed sometimes how, as you know, language evolves. Language evolves. I served as manager of information system at our company for 10 years. And it's interesting, at one time, memory, was something that was lost with age. But now when we talk about memory, I mean, it could be something, a little jump drive. It can be, still some folks that use a disk and stuff. And so it has a different understanding now. It just relates. When you talk about memory now, most people think about something on your computer. You don't even think about up here. But when I was growing up, memory was something that old folks lost. And then, do you remember when an application was actually something that you use for employment? just the term. I mean, it wasn't, when we said an application, it wasn't something that was used on your telephone or on your computer. An application was something that you filled out to get a job. A program was something that was on TV. A cursor, that was somebody who used profanity. A keyboard was a piano. A web was a spider's home. A virus was the flu. A CD was a saving vehicle that you had in the bank. A hard drive was a long road trip. A mouse pad was a place that a mouse lived. Although language evolves, please be very, very cautious of changing or erasing the definitions that take us away from God's core of his original plan. Always be careful. I would say it this way, don't ever take down a fence until you know why the fence was put up in the first place. You never take down fences until you know why the fence was put up in the first place. There could be a wild dog behind it. There could be an alligator. Somebody could have a wild exotic animal, a tiger, a jaguar, or something. I remember when I used to have a Siberian husky, and some people would come to my house and they would see that husky and those blue eyes, and they would say, "Oh my God!" They jump back. They say, "He's got a wolf in his house," and the dog looked like a wolf, And it's interesting that if people don't understand something, they're afraid of it. But you never remove a fence until you understand why it was put up in the first place. Now listen, let me say to you how not to be defined. How not to be defined. Don't be defined by what happens to you. Don't be defined by what happens to you. The real thing is what matters in you. Secondly, I would say don't be defined by what you do. Don't be defined by what you do. I remember when I'd go on our route, and I'd be riding up in our truck, and I would hear people say, "Here come the grease man, here come the grease man." That was what I was doing at the time. That didn't define who I am. Don't define who you are by what you do. You know why? Because you can quit what you do, but you cannot quit who you are. So don't be defined by what you do. Here's another caution. Don't be defined by where you are. Don't be defined by where you are. Wouldn't it be silly that I realized that a garage is built for an automobile, a motorcycle, a boat, or whatever. That if I slept in the garage, then I thought that I was a car. Don't be defined by where you are, because you can change your location, you can change your position at any moment. You can always change, so don't be defined by where you are. And then fourthly, I would say don't be defined by what or who is around you. Don't be defined by who or what is around you, because you can change the company that you're with. You can change who you're around. And if you change who you're around, what does that mean? That you have lost your whole identity? You need to know who you are. If I'm in the midst of unsaved people, that doesn't mean that I'm going to lose my salvation just because I'm spending some time trying to build relationships so that I can share a story from my heart, and the Jesus is in my heart can walk across the bridge that has been created by the story and walk into their heart. People misunderstood Jesus because they saw him with sinners, winos, prostitutes. He was not intimidated, and they didn't define who he was. You got to know who you are. You got to know exactly who you are. So I just shared with you some ideas in how not to be defined. Now let me say how to be defined. Be defined by who or what is within you. Who is in you? Christ, the hope of glory. Christ in you, the hope of glory. Who is in you? By what is in you? What your mom and your daddy put in you, your grandmama, the values of your family. Be defined by what's in you and who's in you. Be defined by your potential. By your potential. Your potential is not based on what you have done. Your potential is based on what you have not done yet. Be defined by your potential. Be defined not by where you are, be defined by where you're headed. Be defined by where you are headed. Be defined by where you're headed. Be defined by what God has said about you. Be defined by what God has said about you. And be defined by the one who created and gifted you. Be defined by the one who created and gifted you. Remember, David refused to be defined by his current position as a shepherd boy. He refused to be defined by his youth. Life is not measured by years. Life is measured by the experiences that you have. It's measured by the moments that you create. They're the experience that you have. There are some people that live a long time, but they really haven't lived because their experience have been so limited. Their experiences have been so limited. And then you can find a young person whose life has been filled with experiences, and they actually have a full of life because they've been more daring and more adventurous, and they fill their life with experience, as opposed to a person who's done the same thing over and over, living routinely and never learned anything new all of their life, and they had a little life. But you see, it's better to have a life that has been well lived because it was full of experience, full of experience. And so David was young, but he had great experience. And I want you to realize this: the devil's job is to get you distracted and then attracted and then addicted to something that keeps you away from your destiny. His job is to get you distracted and then attracted and then addicted to something that keeps you away from your destiny. And that's how he works. Remember in the garden, he got her distracted. Psst, let me holler at you. He got her distracted. And then he got her attracted. Look at this. Look at this gorgeous forbidden fruit. Look at that. Just take a look at it. Distracted, and then he got her attracted. Then he got her addicted. Because after she got addicted, now she brings her addiction into her husband. And then they fall. And then judgment is pronounced on them. That's the devil's way. He gets you distracted, attracted, and then addicted. That's the ploy that he has for all of your children, your sons, your daughters, your nieces, your nephews, your cousins. His whole idea is to get them distracted. They be in school, he gets them distracted, and then attracted to the wrong kinds of people. Attracted, and then addicted. And it is through that it leads down a road to incredible destruction. The devil is he's such a shrewd creature, but we are not unaware of his tactics. And let me just tell you this. There are different things I see sometimes in the lives of folks. We're so busy because the devil is always keeping mess going. He's keeping mess going in your family, on your job. He's always creating some stuff. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Every time you turn around, it's like you realize, hit the devil, and what else is he doing? But I just want, you know what I saw in the spirit one day? I saw it like us trying to mop the floor, because he was just pouring water on the floor, just kept flooding, when the enemy comes in like a flood. And here we are with a mop, just going back and forth, keep trying to mop up all of the mess the devil is doing. He keeps us so busy mopping that we don't have sense enough to turn off the faucet. I mean, does that make sense to you? See, and so while we are just constantly just dealing with all of the after effects of the enemy, all of his flood, somebody needs to shut off the valve. Somebody needs to get out the sandbags and put up something, instead. But here we are doing the after effect of just, an afterthought. But we need to deal with the source of where all of this mess is coming from, because here we are so busy with the mop and wringing the mop out, and here comes more water coming in, and we are so busy mopping that we are distracted from turning off the faucet, from shutting off the valve, from being able to tie off, this particular area that's got a broken pipe here, shutting the water off from the main valve so we can get it cleaned up properly. We're just so busy because we're afraid that if we don't get this stuff, we got to deal with this thing from the source. That's why you cannot think that you are wasting time when you are praying on your knees and the devil says you don't have time to pray this morning. Oh, you don't have time not to pray, because I'm telling you, the enemy is coming in like a flood, like a flood, like a flood. And we got to be able to identify him, because he's coming in to distract you and then to attract somebody, and then he's ultimately trying to get you addicted and destroyed. Because if you ever get in an addiction, you can't even think for yourself. And he messes up your mind when he gets you addicted. I don't care whether it's to alcohol, to drugs, to sex, to porn, or whatever it is. If he gets you addicted, your life is on a sudden path to destruction. And I just want you to realize that every time you have a problem in your life, it is a divine opportunity for it to become a defining moment. And your question is, am I going to let this break me or make me? You don't know whether you can come into what you can become. And some people think that their life is over because somebody left them. Listen, if people can walk out of your life, let them go. Let them go. Let them go. If they can walk out of your life. Because here's the deal, that if really, if they were critical to your destiny, they couldn't leave. Jesus said that the enemy cannot take out anybody out of my hand that God has given to me. And so when he's got you, he's got you. He's got you. He's got you. That seed remains in him. It is an incorruptible seed. It'll never go bad. And when he's got you, he's got you. When he's put that seed in you, oh, you can call yourself backsliding and going out in the club and partying and doing all this, get all tatted and pierced and all everything. Because once you have tasted of that world, there's nothing that this one has down here that can really honestly compare. And I'm just telling you that we're in a position right now as a defining moment that if you don't change what you know and do, your tomorrow will be the same as today. If you don't change what you know and do, your tomorrow will be the same as today. It's time to have a defining moment. A defining moment to say, you know what, I've had enough of this. Let it be a defining moment that if I perish, I perish. I meant to stand for what the real conviction of God is that you know is right in your heart to do. And you see, I would say it this way, that salvation, the acceptance of Jesus Christ in your heart, is perhaps the greatest defining moment that we will ever have as human beings. Because that translates us out of the kingdom of darkness into the kingdom of his dear Son. That is the greatest defining moment, when you identify with the lordship of Jesus Christ. You can get your defining moment, this very day. And let me say to you, when you do that, you'll understand the difference between insurance and assurance. Insurance is for just in case. Assurance is for no matter what. Are you listening? Insurance is for just in case, but assurance is no matter what. I mean, when you have a blessed assurance, no matter what comes, no matter who leaves, blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. This is not a just in case. This is a no matter what. No matter if I get sick, blessed assurance, I still have a blessed assurance. If I die prematurely, I still have a blessed assurance. A blessed assurance that Jesus is mine. If people lay me off of my job, I still have a blessed assurance. The Lord is still with me. I've got a blessed assurance where I know down in my Noah that I'm all right with him, that if I were to die today, I'm going to be with the Lord. To be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. I have a blessed assurance. Sometimes people have told me, but you don't know. I don't have to know. I have a blessed assurance. I have a blessed assurance that Jesus is mine. And oh, what a foretaste of glory divine, heir of salvation. I'm just telling you, he just blesses me. I'm glad that I have a blessed assurance in my life. The blessed assurance, that was a defining moment that happened in my life when I had an experience with Jesus Christ. And the experiences that you have with the Lord have the greatest capacity to be able to change your life and to define you. Whoever that you are, and wherever that you are, it becomes the greatest defining moment of your life. Bow your heads for just a moment.
Thank you for watching Power for Living with Bishop Dale C. Bronner. Join us again next time for Power for Living, where revelation is power. Power for living.